All right, and looks like we are live. And we got a lot to go over today. I'm going to try to make this as short, straightforward, and to the point as possible. But as people are joining in, welcome everybody. I'm not going to be paying attention at all to uh, the chat or anything like that. I'm just going to be trying to focus in exclusively on the content here. And first things first, I just want to see if got some check and see if it is working. All right, let's see. Got microphone, check. Yep, works. All right, we're good. All right, so like I said, welcome everybody. Today we're gonna do another episode. I've just been so honestly swamped lately, but I've been meaning to do these quite frequently, week after week. And it's going to be a whole expose on Hydee Feldstein Soto. From the case I went through to the acquittal to some of the other stuff that she's been involved that has been less than stellar, let's say. And really, what I like to call the tyrannical trio of totally incompetent morons that nobody ever asked for, nor did Los Angeles ever need. And the trio I'm talking about is you have Karen fishing for donos bass, you have Nathan Golden Boy Hawkman, and then you have Hydee Citibank band bozo Soto. So you have this trio of utter incompetency that is leading the city of Los Angeles. And then, of course, not to mention the utter zoo, for lack of a better word, that is the LA City Council, where nothing ever gets done. It's quite literally no different than what you see at a meat market, where everybody's for sale. The law and politics be damned. And I'll actually be touching on a lawsuit that was won by a very a well-known singer in the area, known as by his stage name as Zuma Dog, who actually successfully challenged the city of Los Angeles over a lawsuit on a First Amendment claim after being kicked out from city council meetings. And he won that lawsuit, and it set great precedents actually for the current state of city council, which is they instituted a bogus rule over what words that they're banning, as well as getting kicked out for First Amendment protected activity, which was ruled as such in the Zuma Dog case, and sets great precedents for a bunch of the other stuff that you'll soon see here. But that's what I've got in store for people today, and I'm really excited to put all this together and hopefully make it make sense. But the first place we're going to start is all the way at the beginning and actually explain the collusion, really, that Hydee Feldstein Soto has with Scientology, and then move back to some of the other cases that she's done, some of this political, selective, and malicious prosecution of, because it's not her first time. So, for those of you that might remember, there was a charge taken out on me where it was ultimately acquitted over one count for a misdemeanor vandalism. And that was dated June 16th, 2024. What happened subsequently is around May 1st is when the charge was acquitted, and basically the deal was that there was an infraction with no fines to be expunged and walk away completely free, which is exactly what happened. And so no conditions, no nothing of the sort. And the real reason of all the things that went on with Discovery, and I'll actually show you some of that. The real reason why I was fortunate enough to actually walk away were actually because of two big incidents that happened. And one of which you're actually staring at in front of you, which is a screen recording I have of a video dating back to June 2nd, 2024, that came from Danny's channel. And the reason why this video clip was especially important is because it quite literally showed exact like for like series of transactions, series of incidents that mirrored exactly for what I was being prosecuted, but yet the people in this clip, as well as the other clips I had on June the 16th, were never prosecuted. And I particularly held off on showing this clip that showed Danny and some other folks all the way dating back to June the 2nd doing the same exact acts that I was being prosecuted for and never got prosecuted, and now can never be prosecuted due to statute of limitations. And so to Danny, I say thank you for saving my life. I don't know if you're here watching it, but if you ever get a chance to watch it again, Danny, hats off to you, sir, for basically being one of the two biggest pieces for why this case ultimately ended up going the way I wanted it to. With the least amount of pain, the least amount of costs, and setting a great precedence actually to move forward with a claim for malicious prosecution. And so what I'm going to show you today is a clip that dated June the 2nd, 2024 at the encampment, just at the same time that they were actually setting up. The first time the nets and the stakes are actually set up. For the very first time ever. This is when they just entered the scene. On scene is Danny, Leah, and a bunch of other people that started there since the encampment. And it'll show very clearly, right? It's unmistakable, very clearly, that the same acts that I was being prosecuted for were done much earlier. And in fact, not only done much earlier date by and the same actions, but also on that same date, June the 2nd. It's a very important date because that date is actually when a letter went out from LAPD, a sergeant over at LAPD and a lieutenant over at LAPD, where through a CPRA, we were able to obtain stating that LAPD had actually directly contacted several leaders from Scientology, telling them outright that what they were doing, dating all the way back to June the 2nd, 2024, that what Scientology was doing with the nets was illegal. And that it was, in fact, interfering with people's First Amendment rights to speak and protest. And yet they did it anyway. And that's even that much more important, and it really ties in with the case of David Salter, I think his name is, his real name, not his performer name, aka the Zuma Dog case, because essentially what we really have here at the end of the day, for a case that I'll be trying my own hand at litigating, is frankly the strongest claim being a First Amendment claim, where not only being deliberately targeted by the city in this incident, but also during the time that I've spoken during the city meetings, being targeted there and being kicked out of those meetings for talking about this very incident, as well as exposing other pieces of corruption that the city and its leaders are doing. And so this is a great series of clips that we have, all showing that, frankly, this is a repeat pattern of behavior by the city to target anybody that dares speak ill of the political backers and donors to heads of the city like Hydee Soto. And not only is it just this case, but it's the case of where Hydee prosecuted the same people for the website that we all use to find information on the LAPD, the Watch the Watchers website. Hydee sued them as well over a completely bogus criminal prosecution of privacy and doxing. And for what? Because they dare to file a lawsuit, aka a writ of mandate, against the city for failing to come up with a response to their CPRA. And the thing that they were requesting over the CPRA was already content that is public, which is the names, photos, ranks, serial number, and salary information for all the LAPD officers. Not intelligence assets, but just the public sworn in officers, the officers themselves. And for that act, just for the act that they actually filed, right, that the Watch the Watchers folks filed a suit, just for that very act alone, Hydee went after them. And ultimately, that lawsuit actually resulted in Hydee completely dropping the entire case, and they Hydee getting the city sued over it, where our settlement was reached to the tune of $400,000 for all of the nonsense that Hydee put the great folks over at the Stop LAPD spying coalition that makes the Watch the Watchers website. And so this a great precedent that Hydee is setting here for targeting people that go after her political backers. But without any further ado, I'm going to play this clip here, particularly that comes from Danny's stream. And again, hats off. Thank you, Danny, for being there and recording this, because this is absolutely monumental to my case. And I'll explain to you actually why the way I recorded, the screen recorded it, is really the best way to record it. So you can see on the video that the channel name is visible, the date of the stream is visible, the YouTube logo is visible, the URL from which it was captured is visible. That's how you authenticate, aka show the validity and legitimacy of the background to where the video came from, who captured it, and so on and so forth, to enter it into a court of law. So without any further ado, we're watching the first time, all the way back in June the 2nd, 2024, the first time that the Nets make their appearance, and how other people were removing the Nets, yet were never prosecuted for it. So with that, I'll go ahead and play it, and we'll see if we get some video.
Intern darling, go back into the campsite. They'll arrest you.
You guys do know it's public, right? So we're gonna remove it tomorrow. Okay, I'll do that. I saw your message. 86.
The principal is simply these.
Oh, DOA is here. DOA.
Look who's here. He tells me
Try to do it on three.
Oh, okay.
Then use the other side of the body too.
I work for them?
The other operating point is the nerve.
Am I?
Now, the fellow is bleeding from an artery and is going to lose all the blood in his body in the next
It's public, buddy. It's public.
idiot to do a touch of this and then apply it
It's public.
and then do a touch.
It's public, sir.
Now, the proper sequence is not to give him a shot.
It's public. You know that, right? Public. Public.
Under the influence of drugs.
Public.
And if
Don't destroy. Public. Public.
supposing a man has broken his hip or something like that, you give him a touch of this, you give him a touch of this, try to get some of the shock off of it, try to get some of it off of it, try to go left hip.
That's fine.
Do a touch of this to the left hip, you go up the spine, down the spine, back of the legs, through the area, and then you would do
Yes,
it
I
on the
can.
opposite side of the body. You do the same thing on the opposite side of the body. And,
Pick it up.
Throughout, except you don't have to say it once you've got it.
Clean it
in
up.
the groove.
Come on.
And
Get
then,
back
of course,
inside.
you've got the
It's public.
get it off. The guy may still be in agony because the thing is pretty badly smashed up.
Pick it up.
Greater beings.
And then let him
Here, pick it up. Bye.
medical tab.
Adios.
Plumbing is also passable. And let the medical addict do what he can. Try to minimize.
Look what your neighbors are doing. Scientology's doing.
So the video goes on after that. There's more moving of the nets, but you get the gist, all right? This is such a beautiful clip because it so clearly shows, right? It so clearly demonstrates that not only were there other people, but the best part is that these people were never charged. Not a single one. And same goes for the incident when I was there on June the 16th. They were never charged. But it doesn't end there, right? This is where, for some reason, Hydee just can't help but dig herself into the worst situation ever. It becomes ever more clear, where not only with this clip, not only with my clips, but also when I showed up to interview her at a public event where she was at a speaking engagement, where the speaking engagement was to speak at the Sherman Oaks Homeowner Association, where she was invited to be the keynote speaker, and she was doing this as part of her political campaign rally, where the whole gist is she goes around to all these rich valley environments to rack up money as well as political support so that people vote for her, because elections are coming in this next year for Hydee, as well as for Bass. And so it's a wonderful election season because we have two morons that are up for re-election. So I can't wait to confront them at public events and ask both. Now definitive proof. Absolute, objective, definitive proof. Why does Hydee run political cover for Scientology? Why does Hydee Soto simp for Scientology? Soto, the simp for Scientology. That is what she has left her career legacy as. That is what she will be known for. And people might not think of this is true, but the fact of the matter is, as far as viral internet sensations, especially with younger people, the whole nonsense of Scientology is still very much alive. And how wonderful will it be to show up at all these public events that Hydee's having, right? And just shout that out each and every time. Why are you a simp for Scientology? Same thing with Bass. We have Bass quite literally being invited to a very exclusive speaking gig for Scientology. People have said it before, but Scientology was not at the forefront of LA before. Everybody and their grandma right now knows about Scientology. In fact, I can tell you that in all the conversations I've had with even Duarte and the other LAPD officers that are at the city council meetings, they tell us all the time that their kids talk their ears off at home and with their friends about Scientology. That their own kids nonstop talk about Scientology, show them TikToks about Scientology, Instagram reels about Scientology, YouTube shorts about Scientology. It is quite literally the it thing with the younger crowd right now. They are absolutely in love with this crap. And it's hilarious to see. Quite frankly, it's so funny to see that people like Duarte get it from both sides. They don't stop hearing about Scientology while they're at work, and then even while they're off duty, they still hear about Scientology. And it's because of nonsense like this. This video clip, the moment I shared this was when things really started to take a very good turn. Okay, a very, 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 very good turn. Terrific turn. And so I don't know if you're in here, Danny, or if you're going to watch this later, but hats off to you, man. You were a big help in this. I had a couple of other clips dating back to that day, but this was one of the best ones of them all. And it really just set the stage to really show and lay it in, okay? So this was it. June the 2nd, 2024, showing very clearly they had several other people doing the exact same act and not a single one of them was ever prosecuted. In addition to June the 16th, doing the exact same acts of removing the netting. And you can see clearly from this clip that there was no damage done here. The simple act of moving it and putting it over to the other side is not vandalism. And that's exactly why things progressed in my case the way they did, where I was acquitted of the charge, because there was no probable cause. But unfortunately, what people don't understand is that in Los Angeles, you don't get that for misdemeanors. In Los Angeles, the local court rules are specific in that for misdemeanor cases, there is really no such thing as a probable cause hearing. The only probable cause, air quotes, hearing that you get is trial. That's it. Unless, of course, you have a lawyer that is willing to go to bat for you and, frankly, do their job and advocate. There is such a thing as essentially having a probable cause hearing right at the pretrial hearings. You can absolutely do that. Procedure be damned in LA. I know people have sent me tons of crap that's honestly all useless, talking about how, oh, they can't do this or that in LA, or how are they getting away with it? You know, it's not like that here or there. Well, let me tell you something. First of all, there's different local court rules for procedure and criminal proceedings especially. And second of all, it doesn't matter. It's LA. Welcome to LA. Whatever you think is supposed to happen or how things should be doesn't matter. It just doesn't matter. However you think things are going to go, no. Not even the opposite. It's going to be totally random what's going to happen. Expect nothing to be rational, everything to be completely out of whack. And so that's how you handle misdemeanor cases, though. You have a lawyer that, even though you don't have a formal probable cause hearing, you can have one through these hearings by essentially pushing, having sidebar conversations or even conversations in the judge's chamber. And I've seen it happen before. Absolutely. But it just depends on if you have somebody that'll go at bat for you. And if they won't, then that's just kind of the way it is. And unfortunately, the vast majority of LA lawyers, like I've explained before, will not do so. In fact, even in the Zuma Dog case, where he made the First Amendment claim against the city that he ultimately won, that was the only claim that he won. Specifically, though, he didn't even necessarily get the argument of a First Amendment violation to stick when he was suing the city in federal court for being kicked out of a public forum. The real reason why his First Amendment claim even got through the door was because he originally actually made the First Amendment claim particular to how they were banning certain vendors and street performers over at the Venice Beach Boardwalk. And the city was favoring certain businesses that had business interests with city members and their families without permits, and then making it illegal for other people through bogus ordinances to perform or sell or busk at those public spaces. And so that's how that whole thing actually came to fruition in the first place. And then getting kicked out of a public forum specifically for addressing that issue was the groundwork necessary for him to actually win it. And then the opinion piece written afterwards was specifically that, in fact, overall getting kicked out of the meetings is unconstitutional as long as you're not being disruptive, aka you're not physically attacking somebody, basically committing a crime. As long as you're not committing a crime, you can say whatever in your speech, even if it is targeted to a particular council member and their behavior. Doesn't matter. It's protected speech. And so that was something really important to note when dealing with First Amendment issues in LA. It's not enough to just say the First Amendment violation. You have to really go to bat and explain it. And the funniest part about the Zuma dog case, actually, as I've been researching it, is the fact that when it came time to win a payout for winning the claim, he actually didn't win anything of significance. It did go to jury trial. The best part of the case was getting trial cross-examination and a whole trial proceeding for about a week of different council members and so forth. But him and his co-plaintiff were awarded only $1 each. The real kicker was the lawyer's fees that they won for their lawyer, for their 4 lawyers, in total summing up to about $1 million, which was the real damage to show the city that, hey, you violated our constitutional rights, but also the city will not be paying you anything because the jurors voted that, yeah, we agree your First Amendment right was violated, but we don't believe you actually had any damages to show for it, aka they weren't thrown in jail, they didn't experience any hardships other than getting an attorney. And so it's kind of stupid when you really think about it, because they should have been awarded monetary damages for being suppressed of their First Amendment rights in and of itself. That, that constitutes as damages. But apparently, again, because this is LA, unless you suffered something like a false an arrest and then were thrown in jail and held with a bond afterwards, they don't count that as damages. So that's the kind of crap that goes on in LA, and people that don't know LA or not in here or have, they read whatever bogus mainstream media crap about LA, they're under a completely they're just under an illusion, and they have no idea what they're talking about. So this was I just wanted to share that with you guys, what happened in one of the most pivotal examples of the selective and malicious nature of Hydee. And so this, again, shout out to Danny for making it happen. And the next thing I want to show you guys is some of the discovery obtained, particularly the police report. And I'll show you some of my favorite pages on it. It's too long overall. It's too boring. But some of my favorite pages, so let's see. We'll go to, there we go. This is the reading of the count itself. The funniest part to me of all this is when you actually look down here at the bottom left, then let's see if I can actually show my cursor. There we go. Right here. If you actually take a look at who they're claiming that this belonged to, they can't even spell Scientology correctly, man. I mean, literally, this was typed up by, like, fly-by-night. Like, literally some fly-by-night litigating nonsense. Where they just typed it up, didn't even spell the name of the entity correctly. So, Scientolog. That's right there off the bat. You could say, well, I don't know of a Church of Scientolog. Well, where is this Church of Scientolog? I've never heard of such a thing. But right off the bat, you can tell this is just done as a joke, as a political favor, and they can't even be bothered to get the name of the actual entity that came forward with filing the complaint. I mean, this is the kind of crap that Hydee Soto pulls. All right, that's enough of that. Next thing I wanted to show you guys is, let's see. Oh yeah. You can actually see here the other funny part about the count reading is you can actually see that they literally don't even list my name. Literally right here. I mean, how can you have a charge not assigned to anybody? That's the kind of crap that Hydee pulls. That's the other thing just on this very first page that is utterly hilarious. Moving on to other favorite page here. Okay, let's go. I'm gonna hide some of the parts because there is the personal info, contact info of the guy that submitted the police report, and he's actually his name is Alexander Scott Irvin. He was actually present at the second trial day earlier this week for Scott, where people were there, and so some of you guys definitely saw him, but he's a younger looking guy, and his name is Alexander Scott Irvin, and he's part of the Sea Org, and he works specifically as a PAC security guard. But let me go ahead and just mute this real quick to get to the next page that I wanted to show. Okay. So that next page has to do with the original, the starting of the narrative that they put down. I think this should be good. Right. Good. Go ahead. Police report, and we'll show it. Right. And let's see. So, part of the police report here, the funniest part, first page, right off the bat. Okay. Right off the bat, they actually start talking about how I fled the scene. Okay. And the implication of this is actually very specific later on in the report. In the report itself, they're specifically using that verbiage to say that I somehow was detained, which you can clearly see in the interactions I had with the other law enforcement officers on scene. About 4 of them at 3 separate times that I was never detained, that I asked that up front. No such thing had ever occurred. I was free to go at any time. And it's hilarious. It's hilarious that in their own reports, they continue to lie. And the best part of it all, on this particular paragraph here, where they're describing what happened, is the victim. In their own words here, the victim specifically, in their own words, the victim is property. Not an individual, but property. And why that's important, it has to do with the witness statement that Jennifer herself actually wrote, where Jennifer specifically stated that she personally was the victim. Not Scientology as an entity, not the property of Scientology, but it was she personally. And not only that, that she had attested to being there on scene that day. And it's clear as day that she never was. It's clear as day that she was literally never there. And so we have the name of the the name of the officer at the desk that took the report. We have their serial number, 41779. And the time that they actually reported it was shortly in the afternoon that same day. So this was just after I talked to Barajas and his other buddy. I think his name is Marcus. So just after my interaction with Barajas, where I actually went to go get some lunch because I was starving, hopped on a scooter and I went to get some lunch. Quite literally within moments after that, they hopped right over to the Northeast station. So this guy drove over to Northeast within mere moments of that insane interaction, which means they placed a call, which definitively was not recorded, meaning they had placed private calls to Northeast, aka some sort of leaders, to whom exactly I don't know to this day, but I know for sure that there was never any calls officially to dispatch made, neither to the generic dispatch, which was what they were trying to originally say, where there's a 213 number that you can contact dispatch. That didn't, instead of 911, that did not happen. They contacted directly their snitches, okay, and their grunts over at Northeast, straight up, to have Barajas and Marcos, or forget the guy's name, but I have it written down, to come over to the scene, and within mere moments of that, had this guy, Alexander Scott Irvin, drive over to Northeast. Okay, drive over to Northeast Division and file the report. Okay, that's how fast all of this happened. That's how fast. And of course they do, right? Of course, we know for sure that definitively one of the arms that they're using to target people deliberately is specifically Northeast, especially after Hollywood Division was already, right? Hollywood Division was already outed way back, dating in November, December time frame of 2023 up to January, where people were outside the info center, trolling them, and all the people were gathering by, like the dozens outside, and things were really picking up steam on the virality. So by then, Hollywood had backed off. And the last thing Hollywood did officially, as far as publicly goes, was write they had their public information office write a public statement claiming that William Good, Jessica Palmadessa, and anybody else that was speaking ill of Scientology, quite literally, their own PIO office, public information office, quite literally made a public statement and published it out, saying that this is a violent gang, a violent criminal gang. The same exact verbiage that we know definitively were given to the Hollywood Division by Scientology to state, particularly by Idiot Moxon and his cronies, right, with the helping hand of Jennifer, for sure, Jen and her men, that this is what was going on behind the scenes at the behest of Scientology, colluding with LAPD, and then eventually the city attorney's office to target people selectively. And target them in the stupidest of ways, too, that they never expected would backfire. But here it is. So that's the first thing I wanted to show you here. They're talking about fleeing the scene, and that specifically the victim, right? The victim specifically is Scientology property. And they're not even saying it was the stakes, but specifically that the plastic netting, and only the netting, just the netting itself, was damaged. Right? That's the specific particular thing on this case. That's going to be very important. All right. Let me move on to the next part of the report. All right, just going to hide this again. Got to find the next page. Okay, this is the second part of the investigative report. This is where a Sergeant Gonzalez actually followed up on the investigation after the front desk took it. So what happened is, and I think this is good enough, I'll scroll down. Okay, so this is when Gonzalez takes over. So the report gets made at the front. And then the other thing to know is the dates for when all this occurred. So the report was filed in person at Northeast at about 5 o'clock on June the 16th, okay? 5 o'clock June the 16th. And then the important thing to know is that this thing makes its way, okay, directly to the sergeant's desk, okay, that you'll soon see here. This report makes its way directly to a sergeant's hands on that same day. On that same day, the front desk officer, Rosales, that you saw earlier, immediately hands this over to Sergeant Gonzalez here, 40096 of Northeast Division. And that happens at about 6:15. Immediately, a sergeant gets to looking at this. Within an hour, literally an hour of the report being made, it immediately gets escalated to a sergeant for further investigation. Immediately. And you'll see that here. And this is where they slap on a PC. Okay. And so you'll see here that Sergeant Gonzalez here, okay, is writing up a narrative, right? And they're writing up the whole narrative. They're writing up where Alexander was interviewed, aka at the station, as you can see here. And they're writing up exactly the date and time. And then the best part here is that what you'll see just later on. So you verify here that Alexander is a PAC security guard. Okay. They're saying that right here, I ripped it out, and thereby stipulating, which is an important word, just taking it there, which means they're just taking it as what Scientology is saying, specifically what Alexander Scott Irvin was clearly used as a lackey, what Scientology is saying as just true without any sort of supporting details. And that they're specifically saying that it was motivated by a hate crime due to previous interaction with them, where I made anti-Scientology statements, whatever the fuck that means. I have never had direct personal interactions with Alexander Scott Irvin. Okay, that's first and foremost to remember all this. So from this slide, the most important takeaway is that he's PAC security, so he's a Sea Org slave. He gets paid $47 a week. That's a fact. The second thing is that they're saying that the simple act of removing the nets, okay, and by the way, they got it wrong. They're saying that I ripped out the plastic nets. I never did that. I pulled the stakes from the ground, but the nets were actually not in the ground. The actual net itself was hovering above ground. Okay, I only pulled out the stakes. The nets were still attached. So that again is yet another lie right there. And then permanently damaging it. Okay, so again, they're specifically saying here damaging the netting only. They're referring exclusively just to the netting. And the last part of this is that they're saying it was motivated by a hate crime, right? Trying to get an enhancement of some sort. And they don't even get how that enhancement works, but they're too fucking stupid to stop at getting a legitimate case, and they'll just make up whatever the fuck they think sounds good enough. And at this point, we go to the next part. The next part. What do we have? Photos, recordings, videos, evidence. None. Additional info. Ongoing problem. Court info. I can testify to the statements pertaining in this report. So this goes to both the sergeant as well as Alexander Scott Irvin. So again, we have a couple of things here. We have this report literally landing to a sergeant's hands within literally an hour. It's within an hour of this guy going to Northeast and making the report. From there, we have verification that he's PAC security guard, aka a Sea Org slave, making $47 a week. And then we have right here an admission that they have no evidence, no supporting anything, and they're just saying this is an ongoing problem because somehow whatever the fuck they believe anti-Scientology statements there are, that counts as a crime. That just saying Scientology fucking sucks and is a cult, they're saying that's a crime. Just saying that's a crime, which it isn't. And that's what you have LAPD taking as the seriousness of this whole nonsense. So it goes to show how utterly stupid this is, right? It goes to show how utterly ridiculous this is. But moving on. So far we have the report being made on about 5 o'clock at Northeast. Within an hour it gets handed, immediately assigned to a sergeant for further investigation. And then what's happened next is the best part of all this. So I just want to make sure that the next page is good to move into. Okay. And yes, it is. Okay. So this is a follow-up investigation for the report. So it's in the hands of a sergeant now. There's some backhanded dealings going on. And at this point, this is when it actually gets assigned to a detective, okay? AKA Detective Peinato, 40873. So at this point, Peinato gets a hold of this report. He gets assigned this specifically. And what you need to know about Peinato is that he's the mole, okay? He's the Northeast mole that is responsible for escalating unnecessarily any and all calls that happen within Northeast jurisdiction. Not really jurisdiction, honestly. It's within any area that is marked out for Northeast to respond to. He's the guy that will take any and all calls and immediately escalate them for prosecution at the city attorney's office, where they stupidly enough rubber stamp the shit out of it just cuz, okay? The thing to know here is that this report is dated June 25th. So just a little over a week, and immediately you have a detective assigned. But not only a detective assigned, but the goddamn detective is also writing a formal report on the damn thing. And as you saw earlier, he's writing a report on the damn thing with no evidence. Where Alexander Scott Irvin himself admitted to having zero evidence to support that the netting was damaged, that they own it, and to exactly the specific degree of the damage. Okay? Within a week. That's how stupid this whole thing is. But Hydee just can't help herself, and neither can the Northeast Division of LAPD. Particularly this Peinato moron. So June the 25th, This is already in the hands of a detective, and he's already moving forward with a formal write-up of an investigation with zero evidence, zero information, zero legitimacy, just taking everything at their word. And here's the proof of that. Here's the proof of that. Penato, the utter moron, doing the most. That's what this page shows us. So we can keep scrolling on this one. So on this page, what are we taking a look at? This is all written by Penato at this point on. Moving on. Okay, Penato, what does he write? This moron outright lies. Right here. Lies like a goddamn son of a gun. The nature of the crime. He writes as bodily injury. Penato, this utter incompetent excuse of an officer, fucking writes that there was threat of violence. That there was threat of violence. Penato talks about completely made up shit. He lies outright and knowingly on the fucking report without zero evidence, just pulls it straight out of his ass and says that there is a threat of violence. Nowhere was there ever a threat of violence, anywhere. And if there was, you bet your ass the 4 cops that showed up would have taken me into custody right then and there. But you know what they did instead on that day? They all admitted no crime was committed. And they all admitted we have zero proof that Scientology has a permit. And we're not even there at that part of the discovery yet, but we'll get there. But this utter moron, right here, big lie. Bodily injury and threat of violence. That's what he's saying occurred. And, okay, and threat of violence. And this moron, taking a look at this other section here. Can't even get the fucking address right of where it happened. It was on Catalina. It was on Catalina. So this is Ishmael Penato. The moron who just straight up makes shit up as he goes along. Literally. Literally just pulls shit out of his ass. And then here they're just talking about the victim statement, aka there's perceived bias. Whatever the fuck that means. Everybody has a bias. As if somehow that holds any sort of relevancy. And the best part actually comes next year towards, let's see, relationship. Yes, here we go. Relationship between suspect and victim. He writes yes, as in known to victim. Even though Alexander and I literally do not know each other and never met one another or ever had any sort of interaction, yet it literally also says in that same paragraph, the length of relationship unknown. How the fuck can you know somebody and then not know of ever knowing them? That does not compute. That makes zero rational or logical sense whatsoever and is quite literally impossible. So again, off the rip, okay, and it's not the only report that Ishmael Penato writes, but it's the beginning of his utter fucking stupidity. It's honestly laughable at how utterly incompetent this guy is and how willing he is to lie. And so the natural question, when I eventually will get him, I will get him served with a subpoena for when I make my suit against the city as one of the people to testify as a witness to all this, to say, why did you lie? Outright. Repeatedly, too. And knowingly. And did so without any evidence. But we move down just a little bit. Just a little bit to the evidence portion. Okay? Evidence portion. It says, were witnesses present during the incident? He checks no. Fucking liar. There was shitloads of witnesses present during the incident. Tons of fucking witnesses. Okay? And the fact that it was videotaped. Second of all, he's talking about, was evidence collected? Checks no. Admits right there. There's no fucking evidence for any of this shit. Were photos taken? Checks no. And even better, were statements taken by anybody that he was supposed to follow up with? This fucking moron didn't do any follow-up, and he admits it on this part of the report. He doesn't follow up with Alexander. He doesn't follow up with anything. And literally admits to not doing any sort of due diligence. Literally on this report admits he's pulling it out of his ass. He didn't do any due diligence. And fuck it, let's just put it on a report. Ishmael Peinado, guys, working hand in hand. Moving on to the next part of his report. Same date of the report, June the 25th. Okay. The only thing of note here is this question right here. Has the suspect ever threatened you? What does he put? He puts no. So if there's no fucking threats, then why the fuck did you put threat of violence here, you stupid moron? Look at that. Threat of violence, he checked as yes. But yet on the same report, he marks very clearly, was there any ever any threats made by the suspect? No. So tell me, Peinado, how the fuck can both of those be true? They can't. They absolutely cannot. And so this is the kind of stupidity that Peinado happily puts on full display. And with that, we'll go on to the next piece of this. And I just want to make sure. Let's see. Do you have any info here? All right, let's go to the next part of his report. Where Peinado explains exactly what he did. Okay, Peinado puts on full display explaining each of his steps. Biggest takeaway from this giant chunk of crap is that right there it says Alexander Scott Irvin estimated that exactly 400 dollars of damages were done, but never provided any copy of the purchase order of the netting, nor any sort of footage as evidence. So he's just right there. Okay. And this is dated back when Thursday, June the 20th. So here's the breakdown of the timeline so far. We have June 16th, 2024 at exactly 5 o'clock. Alexander Scott Irvin arrives at Northeast. At exactly 6:15, that police report makes its way over to a sergeant. That same day, okay, that same day, he was given, he being Detective Penato. Okay, he was specifically, personally chosen and directly on that same day assigned this matter. So less than 24 hours, less than fucking 6 hours actually, less than 6 hours, Penato, there's a detective assigned. That's the fastest I've ever heard LAPD moving on any case. How long do they take to respond to any cases involving Scientology? And how fast are they moving with a fucking detective to get assigned to a bullshit police report, right? So the same day, June the 16th, he gets assigned. Thursday, June the 20th, this moron is doing a review and admits yet again that there's no proof of ownership ever provided as evidence by Scientology. Okay. And again, we have repeated saying that the specific grass netting and that I fled. But I never fled the scene because I was never under detainment. I was never remanded. I was never arrested. I was never in custody. And so there was nothing to flee. This fucking moron yet again tries to make it seem like I was under apprehension, but I was never in their custody. So yet again, right, we have this repeated pattern of outright lying. Repeat pattern. Just can't help himself. Let's continue. Next page we have here. Dun, 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 dun. Not that one. Let's see. Keep this one up all. Guys, wait. Yeah. Um. Nope, nope. Pages away. Looking for the next report that he makes. Okay, there it is. Date of the next report is July the 5th. So I gotta scroll to that page real quick. All right. Couple pages down. Bear with me here. Almost there. There we go. So this is the second report that he makes, the follow-up. The only things to note here is just showing verification and proof. That right there, the date of this follow-up is July the 5th. So right now we have July the 16th of the report getting made at the front desk, within an hour getting handed to a sergeant on June the 16th. And then that same day, June the 16th, getting immediately handed over to Ishmael Penato, the simp and mole for Scientology over at Northeast. That's the detective. That's the simp that's filing all these bogus bogus escalations over to the city attorney's office for prosecution. Then on Thursday the 20th, June 20th, 2024, which is a Thursday, he makes a summary that he writes down explaining that there's no evidence, admitting as such. June the 24th, June the 25th, he made the first official report where he pulled out of his ass that there was violence occurred, threats of violence and bodily injury, which never occurred. And then this is his last report on July the 5th. Okay. This is the follow-up. And just to show us proof, there he is. Same guy. So let's see what the fuck he's lying about this time. So here we have him trying, and might I add failing, to make a hate crime supplemental enhancement. Where again, even on a second time, he outright fucking lies. First time, it's one thing, but 2 times, he writes the same shit. He writes that there was bodily injury and that there was a threat of violence, which never fucking happened. Yet again, Penato lies on me, slanders me, tries to assassinate my character by outright lying and saying that I've threatened violence to somebody, to who he never writes. But that never happened. It never happened. And he lies about it again on this July 5th report. He lies about it again. But that's not all. This is the best part. Mark this down right here. Reason for bias. Are there indicators that this suspect is affiliated with a hate group? He checks yes this time. Now he changes his narrative to add some more bullshit. To say what? That there's a hate group. With who and what hate group? He never mentions. But apparently there's a magical hate group. And again, why and how did he get to that conclusion? Well, remember I explained it to you back in December of 2023. Hollywood PIO, Public Information Office, came out with a bullshit statement that William Good and Jessica Palmadessa and anybody else that dares publicly criticize Scientology and videotape them on social media is part of a criminal gang. Which is outright fucking slander, bullshit, lies, any plethora of other shit. And here is where he has the audacity to outright continue to lie. Again. And say, now I'm part of a hate group. But that's not all. Continuing down the report. Again, he says, is the suspect known to the victim? He writes yes. Nature of relationship and length of relationship unknown. How the fuck can you claim to know somebody and have a relationship with them and yet at the same time say there is no relationship with them? Explain that one to me. How the fuck does that make any sort of sense? But this is the dumbassery of Penato. I mean, you just can't make this up. But he definitely sure shit can. All right. Move on to the next part of this. This is my favorite part, to be honest with you. Favorite part. So this is a narrative on July the 3rd where he contacts Alexander Scott Irvin. Okay? He contacts him. And he says, I, Penato, contacted Alexander Scott Irvin, the person reporting. And then he asked if the cult of Scientology had any previous interactions and if it was motivated by hate. Irvin said that Marini had made several hateful and anti-Scientology remarks on social media, whatever the fuck that means. What's hateful and anti-Scientology remarks? We're gonna see exactly what he's talking about here. This is my favorite part. He provided me with screenshots of my live streams, aka that's just him saying this is how I know that he has a YouTube channel. Irvin expressed concern about him continuing to return vandalism and hate speech, and specifically, he shows Marini referring to Scientology as a chomo cult. And rambles about living in a van. I don't live in a van, though. A chomo cult. How is that? That's not hate speech. That's actual fact. Scientology does protect child predators. That's a fact. That's an absolute fact. And it's a very well-known one, too. That's a fact. So that's the anti-Scientology part. Apparently that's illegal, you guys. According to Penato, that's illegal. How utterly idiotic. And then the last thing that he does, okay, old idiot and moron Penato, is he tries, and he fails, but he wants to get an arrest warrant. Okay, he tries to get an arrest warrant with zero evidence by his own fucking admission, and I guarantee this moron was absolutely laughed out of the office for trying to get a fucking arrest warrant without any sort of proof. Any sort of proof. And even admitting in his own stupid report that there was no proof. So the best part of all this is that this isn't the first time that Penato has pulled a shit like this. He actually has a history of making these false reports. There's a case, Leola Johnson v. Robert Allen, that Penato also pulled out shit out of his ass on a police report. So this is who Penato is. A guy known and having complaints of making false police reports. That's Penato for you. And I made a complaint on his ass for that. And you best believe you're going to remember that case. Leola Johnson v. Robert Allen. Ridiculous. Ridiculous. All right. I believe I had the character statement. Let's see. I wanted to show you guys the letter. If I can find it. I can't find it right now, but this is a letter that Jennifer wrote to this was on December 5th during a regular pretrial hearing, where Jennifer showed up to make a witness statement to the prosecutor. And she stated that let's see. Let's see. She states that there was footage in that she saw the video stream and is a possible victim, which she never was. And she didn't need to tell the prosecutor that she was a victim because she never was there. And she isn't a victim. That was the best part. That for all the reasons, I don't know why Jennifer would ever do this to herself, quite frankly. Tell her to tell the prosecutor that she personally is a victim when she's not. And they had already concluded that that Peinado had already seen the live stream. So it's interesting that Jennifer put herself in that situation anyway. And so that's it. That's it for the discovery, because when we did make requests for discovery, the prosecutors admitted that there was no body cam worn footage. So all the 4 officers that responded that day had 0 footage, meaning that shit is deleted. There was no dispatch call logs, no recordings, meaning they either got deleted or, like I said, they contacted a personal contact within Northeast to their direct personal cell phone and then got them to respond. And none of those 4 officers ever made police reports. And this is what Hydee does. She took this case on afterwards. She took a case with 0 evidence. She took a case where a detective repeatedly lied and admitted that he didn't know what the fuck he was doing and had 0 evidence for any of the shit he was saying, but he's going to pull it out of his ass anyway. And is a detective known for lying and making false police reports. For lying on police reports. Okay? This is Ishmael Peinado. And Hydee decided to prosecute this. This is the same shit. This is the same shit that Hydee did when she went after Watch the Watcher, the Stop LAPD with Spine Coalition, which makes the same website for Watch the Watchers. And she prosecuted them criminally because apparently making a CPRA, which then doesn't get answered, and then suing the LAPD and winning that lawsuit to get the serial numbers and their pay and their photos and their rank and their career history with the LAPD turned over. Apparently just filing a lawsuit constitutes as doxing. Apparently just that very act, according to Hydee. Okay? And targeted harassment, apparently. Filing a legitimate writ of mandate, which they won, by the way, and continue to win year after year. But to Hydee, no. That's not... We can't tolerate that. To Hydee, she will do absolutely anything, even if it makes her look utterly stupid, and take on bullshit cases. She'll do it. So this is Hydee. This is Hydee Soto. As you've clearly seen here, she took a case with literally 0 evidence supporting the actual issue. And literally, not only on the 16th, but on June the 2nd, okay, June the 2nd, showing the exact same act being done, but never prosecuting those people. That's who Hydee is. And the next thing I was going to show you, the discovery, the last part of the discovery that get really good are the letter from the LAPD on June the 2nd showing that LAPD contacted Scientology on June the 2nd and told them that what they were doing was illegal. Okay? Told them outright that it was illegal. So let's go ahead and find that. Which one of these? It is. There it is. Letter from Gary Walters. Okay, let's see if that appears on the stream. And yes, it does. Beautiful. This is obtained by a CPRA that audit did. And here it is. Okay. On Sunday, June 2nd, 2024, Michael Ventura copied several LAPD officers, and Michelle Gomez being one of them. Incompetent, moronic Michelle Gomez. Okay, the other Scientology simp over at Northeast. The other moron that did nothing to help anybody. Okay, Michael Ventura said the following. Scientology, and I'll read this out loud. Scientology security is claiming that they are doing maintenance and attempting to block out protesters by installing construction stakes and plastic contractor netting in the sidewalk area adjacent to their property. In return, protesters are claiming Scientology is attempting to violate their First Amendment rights to gather and protest by illegally denying them access to the public right-of-way, which they absolutely are doing and did. Scientology is now claiming that protesters are vandalizing their property by pulling up the stakes and tearing the netting. I shared my opinion to keep the peace and advised Scientology that they cannot obstruct public access with their stakes and netting. And any obstruction of a sidewalk, street, or curb can only be done with the express permission and permitting of the Bureau of Street Services. Any obstructions of the public space without such a permit would be illegal. I'm going to read that again. Michael Ventura, okay, and I'm going to pull up, got to pull up Michael Ventura really quick on Watch the Watchers. Type in his serial number. 30741. He's a detective 3. Okay, so a detective 3 already did their job and contacted Scientology officials. Okay, Michael Ventura of the Northeast Division is a detective 3. Told Scientology that they can't, okay, that they cannot obstruct public access with their stakes and netting, and any obstruction of a sidewalk, street, or curb can only be done with the express permission and permitting by the Bureau of Street Services. Any obstructions of the public space without such a permit would be illegal. Furthermore, we are monitoring the live stream, and there is no battery of the Scientology guards as they are trying to claim. So you have Michael Ventura, okay? Michael Ventura fucking told Scientology that they're lying and to stop lying. LAPD knew that they were lying since June 2nd, 2024. And yet, this fucking liar, Ishmael Peinado, has the audacity to pull out of his ass and try the lie yet again. And actually say it happened, which it never did. Michael Ventura is a fucking legend. Definitive proof that LAPD knew what was going on, that they had contacted Scientology, that they already told them what they were doing was illegal. But that's still not the best part just yet. Because the best part is the fact that there's a fucking letter from the Board of Public Works telling Scientology to remove all their shit from the public right of way and that it's illegal. And that letter from the Board of Public Works was dated August 7th, 2024. So, you have LAPD telling Scientology it's illegal. You have Public Works, again, thanks to Audit LA, showing that the city is fucking pissed off and telling them to put away their shit and remove it because it's illegal. And yet, what does the city do in return? What does Hydee Soto do in return? She says, fuck that. And she goes and prosecutes. That's who Hydee Soto is. That's who Hydee Soto is. And she never thought that any of this would ever come back and blow up in their faces legally. I mean, talk about morons. And I've said this before, and I'll say it again. I feel like I should be thanking the city for giving me an opportunity to litigate what is essentially really a First Amendment case here. I mean, they're admitting outright here that they knew what they were doing was bullshit and that it's a direct violation of the First Amendment because you're suppressing their ability to protest and get together. And that you were advised on it. It's not like you didn't know. Absolutely they knew. Absolutely. 100%. 100%. So you have collusion here, right? You have collusion between the city. You have collusion between LAPD. And you have collusion between City Attorney's Office, LAPD, and Scientology, right? Where Scientology is setting up the environment, and then LAPD is perpetuating additional lies that never happened. And then the city attorney, knowing that all of these are lies, when their own officers are telling them that are good ones, that what's going on is bullshit, and then prosecuting them anyway. Major culpability. And I will be prosecuting this case. Absolutely. Absolutely. So that's the story of Hydee Soto on just this one case alone, as well as that other case I told you about with the Stop LAPD Spying Coalition that she dropped because she fucked up yet again, as she does. And that's not even the end of Hydee Soto's fuck-ups. You take a look at her divorce case. She was sanctioned $250,000 for her malicious and bullshit, repeated bullshit pleadings of trying to issue subpoenas to people that had no relevancy in her divorce matter whatsoever, saying all sorts of claims that somehow her ex-husband, Peter Gregora, was somehow hiding money from her. Turns out he fucking wasn't. And being utterly paranoid that everybody is out to get you when they're not. And ultimately getting a whole fucking banking institution, Citibank, so goddamn fed up with all your shit that they permaban you. Not from one location, but from Citibank all over planet Earth. You can't do business with Citibank anymore, Hydee. Because this is what you do. You file frivolous and malicious shit knowingly, and then you get burned for it afterwards. And you hope and pray that people will not stand up for themselves and hold you accountable with the law. But you have 3 cases here that show the complete and fucking opposite. This is what Hydee Feldstein Soto is. An utter train wreck. A disaster for LA. Who has no business being a prosecutor. Who has zero knowledge of being a good prosecutor. And cannot serve her city properly. She doesn't know what the fuck she's doing. And she'll happily do the bidding of any political supporter of hers if it means winning brownie points for them. And that's exactly what I have on Hydee. a recording over at a public event at the Sherman Oaks Homeowner Association where I interviewed her and I asked her about her thoughts on Audit LA as well as the bullshit vandalism case that she had brought forward. And she admitted that it was a stupid case. She knew it was never going to make it anywhere, but she said, fuck it, I'll prosecute it anyway. That's not just an ethical responsibility to your oath that you swore as a member of the bar, Hydee. It's fucking illegal. That's quite literally textbook case of malicious prosecution. It's not just the act, but it's the political motivation and intention behind it. Discretion does not come into play there at all. And that's the easy provable part in all of this. They knew since June the 2nd, they knew that this was all illegal and bullshit. They knew. But they did it anyway. And for that, you're going to cost the city money, Hydee. For that. Along with the fact that your office is the one advising city council to do their bullshit with banning words at public hearings. You can't just because you don't like certain words, Hydee, doesn't fucking mean that you can make it illegal to say them. You are the biggest reason for why the city has such high liability payouts. You won't prosecute officers, you won't prosecute officials, and you let people like Scientology do this crazy shit. This is your legacy, Hydee, and I'm going to make damn sure that on your campaign trail coming up in the year that the people know about this. Non-stop, I'll be there. Every fucking event you have as you're campaigning, I'll be there to tell the people that you do the bidding of Scientology and that you simp for them. That's your legacy, Hydee. That you simp for a child predator cult. Congratulations. You've earned yourself that title by your own doing. And so with that marks the end of just this video of the legacy and history of Hydee Feldstein Soto. This is her legacy. And frankly, I hope she's proud of it. Because she did it to herself. So with that, thank you all for being here. See you at the next one. Peace out.